or decides that that law is not applicable because of federal statutes, that law will be superseded or just ignored. Now, I don't believe that I fully understand. I know many of our viewers don't fully understand the relationship between Scotland and England right now. And would England have the power to supersede or nullify this law if it were to be passed?
They can try and challenge it. And I hope they do. I expect they will. They're going to try and say that we can't get rid of the nuclear weapons because in their eyes they are protecting the whole of the UK. Well, our position will be, you are welcome to have them back. But we know perfectly well there is no place in England they can be accommodated. So the last resort they have is to try and use the European Court of Justice in Luxembourg and go there and say, we're trying to keep everybody safe in Europe with these. We hope they try that, because we know perfectly well that many countries in Europe have lodged complaints at the United Nations here in New York against Britain's nuclear submarines, saying, you are endangering us. You are not keeping us safe with these. You are endangering us. Countries like Denmark, Norway, Holland have told NATO, you cannot put these in our waters, in our domestic waters. So we are not scared of any challenge from the London government, either in the courts in London or in Europe.
Well, let's talk about potential enforcement. You get this law through. Do the citizens of Scotland take their shotguns and go to the water's edge and say, get your submarines out of here? How can this possibly be enforced? And how can it even be accurately tracked by the Scottish government, which is still somewhat under the British government?
Well, the answer to that is that once we pass a law, the police are, like everywhere else, charged with the duty of upholding the law. And the submarine base where these 4 submarines are kept would be, like any place else in Scotland, subject to the criminal law. And we would end up with a position where if there were guards under Ministry of Defence control inside the nuclear submarine base who were not going to obey the criminal law, then we'd have a state of martial law in Britain. Once we have the criminal law in place, then they are subject to it. You've got to close it down. I'm happy to say that the law I am writing focuses on changing this many, many square miles. It's a very big place where these submarines are kept. And changing this into civilian peaceful use. There will be no problem about enforcing the criminal law.
Well, this seems to be a fascinating idea. Is it possible for other countries to use this model, if successful, to rid their areas of the threat of nuclear submarines?
Well, as you know, there are only 6 countries in the world which have nuclear weapons. America, China, Russia, France, Israel, and Britain. Nowhere else in Europe has nuclear weapons. So, the French have their own system. The Brits have a system linked to America by using the American live warheads. We don't claim that we will make the world nuclear free. What we do say is that as the newest parliament in the world, we are using the law to rid Scotland and Britain of nuclear weapons on both legal and moral grounds. The idea of keeping these weapons, these ultimate weapons of mass destruction, for the purposes of exterminating very large parts of the population of the earth, is absolutely abhorrent to the people of Scotland, as shown in many polls, independent polls taken by the most respected of organisations. It's a sea change in Scotland. Last year, they elect the Scottish National Party, knowing perfectly well that for decades that party's central policy was independence from England and nuclear weapons free. It's the will of the people of Scotland.
Thank you for joining us in the International Newsnet.
You're very welcome. Always a pleasure.